Hi, everyone. Welcome to SoDA Series Live. We're trying things a little different this month and joining you from Austin, Texas. So say hi in the chat. Let us know where you guys are joining from. We're going to keep today's intro a little briefer than usual, but I'm Kristen Bell from the Adobe Strategic Development Team, and I'm joined by...
Hi, I'm Tom Beck. I'm Executive Director of SoDA, and SoDA is a global community for founders and leadership teams of digital design and innovation studios. And we're thrilled to be here in Austin today with Adobe and some of our members to have a great discussion.
Yeah, and today we're again changing things up twice and doing a panel. So today's conversation is going to be led by Brooke Hopper, who's on our Adobe design team focused on AI and ML, and she's going to be joined by three of the SoDA guests, and we'll let them introduce themselves. Tom and I are going to jump off camera, and we'll see you in chat. Thanks for joining us today.
Have a great discussion, everyone.
Hey everyone, I am so excited to welcome you here today. I've got three amazing panelists, as Kristen and Tom said. I'm Brooke Hopper. I am the principal designer on the Machine Intelligence and New Technologies team, and we're here to talk about generative AI. And I'm going to pass it off to Catherine. If you could all introduce yourselves, that would be amazing.
I'm Catherine DeHenry with Media Monks, and I specialize on Web3 and Metaverse innovation strategy.
I'm Nishat Akhtar, VP of Creative at Instrument. I oversee a team of designers and writers who work across product, brand, and marketing.
My name is Jeroen Thissen. I work at Côte d'Azur, a medium-sized agency in Amsterdam who just opened their office yesterday here in Austin. So excited to be here.
Awesome, very exciting. Cool, well I'm going to kick things off and I'm going to, we're just going to start off getting down to the nitty-gritty. Obviously, we're talking about generative AI, and I'm curious, because you're all in agencies, are you using generative AI in your work at the agency? And if so, how are you doing it?
Yeah, well, actually, we've done a massive campaign, one for Adidas, which was a really exciting thing. It not only brought together AI, but it also brought together a component that enabled us to create avatars and then import them in the metaverse. So we're really looking at this from a Web3 perspective. So we allowed people to go online, answer a couple of questions, personality questions, and then it generated a custom avatar that you could then import into metaverse worlds, any metaverse world. So we did this free of charge. So a lot of people chose to keep their avatar, and some of them decided to sell them on to OpenSea. But the beauty of this was that each one we generated 500,000 of these in under a week, and they were just like super, super cool. So rather than having people go through a complex process to actually create these things, it was a combination of all these things which really delivers the Web3 thing. But we've also done it in a way that's very compelling for industry. So for example, we created an opportunity for Nissan to segment, target, and basically pitch prospective car buyers, and we ended up with a 2.5 times conversion rate. So it really shows the opportunity to really send customized messages, increase the volume of sales, the sales targeting, and shorten that entire process by really identifying the people who are closest to pulling the trigger and making that sale. So it can be very powerful for either marketing as well as a sales tool.
That's awesome. Nishat, I'm curious, you're VP of Creative, so I'm curious, are you using this to generate ideas? Are you using it on the creative side? Are you using it at all?
Yeah, we have a variety of ways that we're engaging with AI and generative AI. I think it's really important to acknowledge that these are tools and there are ways to empower creatives. It is essential from our perspective that we have our designers and writers who are, the spark to this work. They're the co-pilots in editing and understanding what's been generated. And a lot of the times tools like ChatGPT or Midjourney is something that's really just used to create a concept. Final work takes real creative perspective in editing to differentiate what something looks like for a client. So we're avoiding just sameness and flatness out there in the industry, that right now the models can make something that looks really beautiful, but doesn't necessarily differentiate the output for different brand strategies.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I think that it's important to note, I'm so glad that you said that, because I think it is important to note that even AI artists who I've spoken with, they call themselves AI artists, they're still utilizing the tools that most designers know and love, you know, whether they're taking it into Premiere to do a bunch of editing or After Effects, you know, I'm naming a bunch of Adobe tools, but like whatever tool of choice that they are, they're still taking a lot of this stuff into normal everyday tools, just like the AI is a tool. They're using it like a tool, and I think that's so important to acknowledge.
Yeah, I want to add, there's also ways to just really create efficiency in post-production when you're thinking about rotoscoping or reducing blur in your motion or your edits. Things like Runway ML is something that, you know, not every process or every project is utilizing it. We're still in the experimental phase of it, but understanding what are tools that can create efficiencies and give a lot of space to prove a concept to the clients and then really allow our creatives to feel like their hands, their perspective, their knowledge of design and creativity and business strategy all make the best final output.
Yeah, totally. I'm curious, we were talking earlier this morning about some of how your team is using it in concepting. I'm kind of curious to hear a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So we use it quite a bit actually already. We have a special task force set up to also investigate constantly how we can kind of utilize these things. I think it's important to know that how I see it personally is that I think only 2% of the company, of the time we spend in the company, is trying to come up with original ideas that make brands stand out, and then there's 98% of stuff happening around that to make that happen, right? So to all the project management, the visualizations, the preparations, meetings, trying to present stuff to a client and get them on board on a certain thought, that is all being accelerated at the moment, and we use it. Actually, we do actually use it. Yeah, we use it to make storyboards. When we sell an idea, we used to hire a visualizer to come in for one day and draw up a couple of images. Now we just do it with Midjourney, and then there's a couple of flaws in it. So one hand has 6 fingers, and some stuff is a little bit flawed. But then we just Photoshop around that, change the head a little bit, and but it's much quicker, right? So I think that's going to be a massive change also for the agency. I think we're just trying to gear ourselves up or trying to arrange ourselves in such a way that we can stay super agile with it, because I don't even know what's happening in 6 months, you know. Right. So how do we try to take it day by day. ChatGPT-4 will be in a couple of days. We'll see what that brings. But we are on top of it, trying to implement that into the organization. Yeah.
It's funny because that actually kind of brings home the idea that working in an agency is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. But I think that that's kind of the point of this, isn't it? That you can take these tools and allow you to scale. And it really, we're a massive media agency, but there are a lot of companies out there who are, startups or have just a small team, and so it does really level the playing field by being able to create prototypes that are sort of early stage, but it allows you to deliver a strong concept and get in front of clients much more quickly. So I think that there's tremendous opportunities there.
Yeah, I think the speed and assisting agencies and a lot of that production and ideation is super helpful. One of the things I want to talk about that I think is very interesting, I hear a lot of creatives and people in agency and any artist honestly talk about is the democratization of creativity through some of these tools. And I'm curious to hear thoughts on, what does this look like what does this democratization look like to you, and what are the positives and negatives? Because I think there's a lot that go into that. I think we can all see this from both a personal side of things, as an artist, as a designer, as someone who looks at creative things, but then also from the business perspective. They're two very different sides of the coin.
Yeah. I can take a swing at that one. I think I'm I run a design team and a writing team, but I'm also an artist myself, and I totally empathize with the aversion that so many artists are going through right now. And, there's this deep creative existentialism that is hitting people to say, what does this mean for me? I have spent so much time creating my own perspective, my own style, and now suddenly we're seeing it output across, in what I would make in one day is now being made in 60 seconds. And what does that mean for me? And, when you peel that back, it's really all about what is a viable creative career for someone? And I think that's a totally fair question for people to be feeling nervous about. And then on the other side of it, we know businesses want to move faster. They have more screens and platforms, as we talked about earlier, to fulfill. So how do we sort of satisfy brands, studios, everyone's need to move faster while also thinking, what is the viable career for creative people? And the tension there, I think, to music, I think to how do we really value art? We know design makes a great impact on clients. We know that storytelling makes a great impact on clients, and so it should be paid for, and art should be paid for, and art should be valued in that way. Just in the same way that once upon a time people were downloading MP3s and not paying for music, but music should also be paid for. And we're in this moment of tension of understanding, well, what are regulations? What does copyright look like? How do we think earnestly, ethically, and honestly about the creation of these tools so that we can honor art and empower all kinds of people to be able to be more creative?
I think that the scale is definitely an opportunity, because think of all the people who want to have their own platform or their own, whether it's a show or a podcast or anything else. You're able, or as a musician, you want to maybe orchestrate something, but you don't have the experience with a specific instrument, and you're not used to writing for it. So there are a lot of ways of taking this as a springboard for creativity and then really kind of scaling it up. And I see this as a tremendous opportunity for people who are looking to to be able to crank out more content. And so for entrepreneurs, I really see this as being a really inflection point in being able to better engage audiences, segment them again, and then you have a one-stop sort of a suite of tools that will enable you to market your business much more effectively, to both create the content and market it as well.
Yeah. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I'm on the one side, a bit skeptical about this democratization of design and creativity, because in the end, Microsoft and Google are not investing in this to just give it to the public and enable everybody on the planet for free to use this, right? So I hope we can, and that's what we talked about, but I hope we can also as creators take a stance in this and take a position in this and try to see if we can free up some of that help that we can get from AI also to everyone on the planet, because as I was saying, probably at some point you're gonna have to pay, if you want to like the top level Mid-Journey, you have to pay 10,000 euros a year or something just to use it probably. So that's what I think is going to happen, because we're going to get tiers and people want to make money. So
the tier started at about $20 from what I understand. My real concern is from an IP perspective. So take for example the fashion industry. It's my understanding that they're going to, that it's very difficult to create a copyright of specific goods, specific items, specific designs. So if we think about fashion, say this jacket, for example, you could think this is just some classic Victorian thing that a lot of little old ladies used to wear in the 1800s, or you could go, well, that's Dolce or D Squared or whomever, but they can own this copyright, and so therefore, if you're a house like LVMH, you can basically copyright your entire catalog and defend it against anybody who creates something similar using Mid-Journey. Is that fair? Because then you basically are then crowding out anybody who is small looking to scale their business that are inspired by previous designs, and to be honest, a lot of them are very similar. So that's my concern. It's not so much the accessibility in terms of the amount of money that you would need, because I'm sure there are ways of getting around it, whether by schools or libraries or something else. The question is, how can you start to own the access to the goods that you create? And to your point, you spend a lot of time refining these. It's just a tool that helps jumpstart the imagination, but not necessarily one that brings it to completion. So I really think there are going to be some thorny legal issues for brands around that.
Yeah, I mean, I think there already are. I think back to, there's definitely issues that brands like Urban Outfitters are notorious for just ripping off artists, and like more often than not, I feel like they get called out now because it's happened a few times. But I think content provenance and sort of like where things originate and where designs originate is going to become much more important. But then there's also to the extent of how, like how far does that go? Like, if I
Exactly.
have one tiny little piece that goes into this bigger whole,
Right.
is my name still attached to that? Maybe. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm kind of curious what everyone thinks about
Maybe
that.
you blockchain it, or you have some sort of water stamp. I'm not sure if we've really come up with that solution, because there were cases as recently decided this last week that have ring fenced the amount of that's basically said that you can't create, for example, for my book. Our publisher, we're supposed to go to publish. We're going to print any day now, and it's supposed to come out in August, and we wanted to do the first AI cover, and they said, well, guess what? We can't copyright that. Personally, I don't have a problem with it not being copywritten, but what's interesting is that they said that can't be done. Well, you have to say, well, we spent a lot of time adjusting the thing, so why isn't it ours now? I mean, it's is it derivative work? What is the database trained on? So are we going to have to create an entire database that's like not Getty images, that's free images? Make them a free public thing? I don't know.
We just don't know, I think,
Yeah.
at this moment.
Yeah, I think you can look at
Yeah.
art history as a benchmark, or like art collections. And really, if you think about Matisse or Leonardo da Vinci, or you think about Frida Kahlo, and you think about iconic works of art from history that we know cannot be reproduced without certain rights. People still do it, obviously, right? You can do a Google search, you can download an image, you can Photoshop out the watermark, and you make an iron-on for a t-shirt, and it's yours. However, if you wanted to reproduce it and put it on the side of a building, you have to pay. And those are some rules that exist and that are benchmarks that we can potentially look at. But I think in design, it's very complicated, because when we're talking about ownership of a style, it is very few people that own a style or an idea, and our trends are moving so quickly that the human mind who is coming up with the idea, who is helping understand a concept that is then being fulfilled by design, which frankly lives pretty temporarily in our life right now. Right. The life cycle of a campaign is very short. A brand is an idea and a persona that organization can breathe and live through, and have many different styles that come through it. But to say, okay, I own the color yellow, or I own, this polka dot pattern is a place where that's really complex. And I think every year, you can name probably like 4 different key styles that you see out in the world that brands are all gravitating to, but suddenly they all start to look the same.
Right.
And that's because organizations, brands, companies want to make money. They want to grab the attention of their audiences, and then they do that by gravitating towards what has been successful. But 6 months later, that shifts and changes. So we have to be honest with ourselves about what is movable, what are we going to be moving in and out of in terms of styles, and what do you really want to own, and what is most valuable to own.
But I think your point about this, the influence of, say, Renaissance masters, many of them were apprentices to the great masters. Mm-hmm. So, of course, they learned a lot about the basic styles, and then they made it their own. So what is the difference now with AI? If I take an image that was generated by Midjourney, it could be something that I ideated in my head, and I already kind of had an image, or it's something that you're kind of thinking and you put it into words, and then you generate the image via AI. What's the difference? The difference is talent. The difference is somebody has the experience, the training to create that artwork that is still based on something that you've seen or experienced in the past. In the same way that, say, a Renaissance artist would have said, oh, this biblical scene that everybody's copying, I'm going to do it in my own pastel shades. And so now we're given a tool that allows people who are not traditional artists to create. So is it really that different? I mean, it seems unfair to then ring fence it and say that's not legitimate artwork. And so that's kind of my challenge to people to really think about, who owns what is the content in that refinement process that enables it to be yours. And I believe that so many of these are very unique. The style is, kind of very similar. It's very moody stuff,
Yeah.
right?
I mean, in fairness, the U.S. Copyright Office is also grappling with the same question. But honestly, because I'm from Adobe, I have to put in the plug for the content authenticity stuff that Adobe is doing, and it's actually really cool. You can upload an image and you can do a comparison, and there's this content credentials and, in a bunch of our tools where you can actually track the edits that have happened. And then that sort of leads me to are we going to get to a point where we're not only tracking the artist, we're tracking the tool? Like, does the AI get credit? Like, is the AI getting credit for something? I don't know. I mean, like,
I think disclosure is, I believe in disclosure is extremely important.
Yeah.
I think disclosure is important to your clients, to your audience. You know, again, like I always try to ground myself in some reality that we've already experienced, like retouching, for example. There's been a whole world and generations of retouching where people came to believe a false sense and standard of beauty, and now we are all like so aware of what a filter is, what retouching is. In some places and countries, you have to disclose that. And when it comes to AI, I think disclosure, not as a way of being sheepish about it, but saying this is what we utilized. Hey, we're going to go through a concepting phase. We're going to use this so that we have a proof of concept to get really quick to an idea. And then we're going to use this really great team to make it custom and appropriate for you.
I love that idea, because that would enable us to then put forward and say, listen, we've made a lot of edits to this, and we've evolved this to something that we feel is original and meets our vision. And to have a tool like that, I would enable someone like me to go back to my publisher and say, hey, listen, we've spent a lot of time on this, and this is something that we feel really captures the essence of what we're trying to convey. And I think that ultimately could be very helpful in shaping the law going forward. Let's hope so.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we talked about homogeny, and I'd love to hear, your thoughts on sort of like what, like, the AI is causing a lot of homogeny already.
Yeah.
Like, where are we going with this?
Yeah, I think it's maybe a continuation of a trend that is already going on that I see a lot, and people are already actively trying to avoid sameness. So we talked about, like, if you take this to the extreme level, then maybe if it takes zero money and zero time to create a campaign, and the only thing that costs a little bit of time is coming up with the idea, you can basically run a new campaign every hour, right? If you're a brand, and now you do it in 3 months. You run a campaign, and then it's like continuous progress and continuous dynamic executions. But they're all going to be trained based on what we either know has been working before or what has been made before. So I think if you try to be original or unique, which I see as my job, trying to be original in this kind of exploding world of things that are all the same, then I still don't see a big role in that little thing for AI, trying to come up with something original. And actually I see it as an opportunity. So first, I think we're going to have to swallow a giant ocean of sameness, and then there will be some resistance. Yes. So, like, come on, guys, it's just too much. It's all the same. It's all you can kind of feel it. It's digital. There's no connection with the human behind who made it. You want to feel a little bit of the blood, sweat, and tears that went into making something. That's why people buy handmade cars instead of robotically fabricated cars. You want to feel a little bit like, okay, what's behind this? Who made this? Can I connect? Also with fashion, you buy old parts, the clothes, but you buy part just the connection with the designer. So if that connection is gone, I think there will be resistance, and we get new creative opportunities to be different and be unique. And that can also be done with AI. So it also opens up possibilities of new ways of being creative. So what if I can put on a VR headset and just generate any environment with any music based on any feeling I have, completely on the fly at that moment, because there's zero time and zero cost in making it. So I can just generate it now and just tell the AI, okay, I want to swim in a Salvador Dali painting with this type of cactus and these fish around me, and then I want this music. So you can come up with anything.
Amazing.
Yeah, come up with anything and then generate it on the fly. So there's going to be new ways of standing out also.
Yeah.
I just want to add something to that, because I think it is so important when we think about existing AI models and the bias that exists within them.
Just about to talk about
that. Yeah, and you're talking about we have to swallow this ocean of sameness, which I think is both horrifying and a very real reality we're stepping into. But each one of us all has our own individual cultural context that we bring through our life experience, our cultural context of where we've come from, and all of that. And so many parts of the world that are not represented appropriately in art history, in racial representation, ethnic representation. So many communities have been not represented over time, so therefore they're not represented in these models.
Yeah.
So the absolute importance of people's input into creating dynamic ideas, bringing rich cultural perspective is going to be critical in differentiation, and is something that AI has continuously failed to do. And it is the opportunity, of course, amongst us. It's not something that only humans can bring, but we have to think ethically about who is being represented, who is being accounted for in these models, who are these models being built for, and what humans are then even prompting them. Generating an AI is not actual search, because it is only indexing the past, and it's only indexing a certain past.
It's wonderful that you said that, because it's a segue perfectly to an experience that I had. Somebody said, "Can you send us a PFP of yourself?" And I didn't have one ready, so I started to feed a couple of my own photos into Midjourney, and the results were not very good. I wasn't able to upload them. So I gave it a couple of prompts. I wanted something cool and futuristic. It's me in a space suit or something like this. But then if I said woman in a spacesuit, it comes up with a white woman in a spacesuit. So I said woman, and it kept white women, and then I prompted it like Rihanna, black woman. It was a very dark woman, beautiful, but it didn't look like me. Right. So then I'm like, okay, light brown, again, white. So it just kept defaulting to what it knew. But at the end, I actually gave up, because I wasn't able to, even if I said Rihanna, it didn't know who Rihanna was.
That's a shame.
And there were not enough also black or brown people who were prominent enough in the database's mindset to draw from.
Yeah.
It didn't understand different types of people or variety. So you and I, for example, we wouldn't appear as part of the results.
Yeah. Languages too. I mean, when we think about default to whiteness, default to sort of a Eurocentric identity, default to English,
or
default to Roman languages. I mean, all of that.
Yeah, I mean, I had this it became very clear to me this was about 8 months ago. I decided to generate a family portrait. And I realized, same as you, I was doing, trying to get the right thing. And I realized, halfway into this, I'm like, I have not seen one person of color. I've not seen anyone who is not a white person come out of this, not one. And so I did this experiment. I've redone it over the past few months, where I tried to generate, the prompt is woman in her 20s with curly black hair and brown eyes. It's still, I mean, you can tell, there's ways that the, certain AI models are able to put the human hand, but there's a long ways to go. And I think
it's definitely a problem, I think.
It's not just Midjourney, because I even was writing it to somebody about womanhood. Somebody said, a friend of mine from the UK, Edward Cotton, put this notice on LinkedIn about how he said, describe, the advertising man. And it was a white guy with a beard and glasses, and he had a tweed jacket, and he was very heroic. It was actually pretty cool. It looked like a lot like my friend, but a contemporary guy. The only thing was missing were the white sneakers. And it was a cool dude, but it was interesting. He said, it's male, it's this, and that. He listed all the things. And I found it really curious, because I said, hey, this is interesting, because as a woman, and then a little pop-up appeared, and it said womanhood, as I started to type in my response on LinkedIn, and they were all small blonde women, and they were doing this kind of thing. And I thought, is that the default for womanhood? And in that moment, I was erased. And so those are the kinds of moments when you realize we are so preconditioned that every single time you're prompted womanhood, wife, perfect, whatever, that doesn't happen. Even for family. Is it 2 moms, 2 dads? No.
Exactly.
What is a family these days? So we really need to think about integrating the entire society and, trying to mix and match a little bit more.
I'm sorry, I was enthusiastic, but it doesn't just go for images, of course. Also, rephrasing history.
Yes.
Historical facts, the courses of how the planet was shaped until what it is now, how things, science, all that stuff is just because it doesn't judge, right? So it's just rephrasing what it has read in a slightly different way. So if you feed it with, it's just a mirror, just give back whatever you put into it. So I think it's a super valid question, mega important that we think about what do we put in these AIs so we get back what's fair and what's honest.
Yeah. So that makes me want to pose a question to all of you. I feel like I spent about 8 years in agency, and I felt like I became conditioned to like, okay, I need, this sort of like range of people. If I'm using fake names for, if I'm doing any sort of like persona style work, I have to like look at a range of names. But I feel like with AI models, you're sort of like, oh, cool, it gave me the thing I get. Like, I think we might have to retrain ourselves to like really produce that sort of diversity that we need.
I think diversity and authenticity, because it's really a reflection of the society that we have today. And today, especially my research and the youth culture, they're the ones that are taking technology and demanding new things of it. And we're going to have to ask new things of ourselves as media companies, as agencies that are trying to serve this, Gen Z, the future, who are going to be 30% of the population in terms of earning power within the next 6 years. So it's really tremendous how we need to rethink about how we're targeting this demographic, because they're expecting that from us. In our book, we talk about this massive cultural revolution that's happening from this generation that's used to these technologies, and they're asking us, and they're creating their own content in their own image, and we need to do the same, absolutely. So we kind of all need a bit of retraining to be able to target these demographics, because they're demanding authenticity. They want to see themselves in the media. They're putting themselves in it, and so that's what we have to give them in response as well.
Yeah, I think that I said the word earlier, and I think co-piloting is so important. It is not just about putting a prompt in and the thing comes out and it's done and it is perfect and that is what's what, because there has to be a bit of a healthy mistrust in what you're putting. There has to be an eye that is scrutinizing, that is thinking about, what are these names? What is a woman? What do I believe that is? What is diversity? All of these things that we can't just trust and say, okay, it's done now. I pressed a button and I have an image and that's perfect. It's really important that we stay in the practice of having scrutiny on the work that we make, and even for ourselves, questioning, is this right? Is this good? Is this appropriate? Rather than sort of rushing so quickly to say, okay, now this is finished.
I hope we get that. I hope it will work like that. Yeah. Yes, I hope we don't get like fully automated campaigns that just publish whatever.
Yeah.
That continuously publish whatever with a little bit of filtering on it. But it's good to kind of stand still also for a little bit and think about these things. Yeah.
So I want to transition a little bit to sort of strategy. So all of you come from, I would say, like larger agencies. Would you consider yourself larger? No? Yes?
Medium size, yeah.
Medium size?
Yeah.
Okay.
We're huge, yeah.
Okay. I was going to say. So for smaller agencies or freelancers, people, agencies with, 5 designers or, a freelancer, like what is their role going to be? Like, how are they going to, stepping outside of like where you're at right now, like how do they compete at this level? Because obviously AI speeds everything up. It allows, your teams to sort of produce faster, concept faster, but there's still, 1 to 10 people. Like what is their future going to look like? Let's move into a little bit of speculation and hard questions.
Yeah. So I think, for me personally, I think that the larger agencies, medium-sized agency that I work, are a little bit more in trouble than the individual, because I think for me the emphasis is going to be on the idea. So I talked about if you're doing a big TV ad or a big digital campaign, and it takes no effort to actually produce what you, let's say ChatGPT 4 can make videos, and let's say ChatGPT 7 will be able to do that in such a way that it's pairing up with Unreal Engine or something in such a way that you cannot even see anymore that it's not real. Then a 12-year-old kid with zero budget can make the next Nike commercial, You don't need any money. So if you have a really good idea, then I'm enthusiastic about that, and maybe the emphasis is going to be more on the idea, because perhaps 10,000 people are going to make Nike ads just because they can, but there's only going to be one that has a good idea, and that is still going to stand out, I think. And the contrast is going to be bigger. So there's going to be so much media. Already we are swamped, but I think that what's interesting is if I would start an agency tomorrow, maybe the challenge would be to do it with 3 people and then just see if we can do the same thing as I'm doing now with 400 people. See how that goes if we can do that. So yeah, that's a little bit how I see it.
Yeah, I think small studios are all about like their very specific point of view, and a medium-sized agency can have a specific point of view on a variety of clients or a variety of kinds of projects, and these tools are useful for anyone who wants to use them. It can empower somebody who is not a designer, who is not a writer, someone who perhaps is low vision. There's a lot of unlocking for accessibility that these tools allow as well, and I think that's important, and I'm all for that. I don't think we should gatekeep who is creative. I'm a designer, I'm an illustrator, and I want everyone to feel excited in the way that we did when we were all young, that we can make something. And so I think anyone can use the tools. The idea is so important. The cultural context is so important.
Yep.
And as long as anyone is showing up with that, we're going to have interesting things out there.
Yeah.
I actually think that for the metaverse, this is a really exciting opportunity because one of the things that we're missing is really quality content. There are a lot of games, to be sure, but we're not seeing the multiplicity of stories being told, of different kinds of experiences in the metaverse that I'd like. And now you don't necessarily need to spend 2 years learning how to code. You can actually speak these worlds into life. You can speak characters into life. And so that could be a really tremendous opportunity to build out this 3D world, in which, as I said, these younger generations are already inhabiting, but to be able to explore different ideas and experiences that don't exist there yet and would be very time consuming and difficult to create because, of course, you can actually now ask it to even edit your code, but even better, it can create the worlds for you. So I'm excited because that will help the metaverse scale and for us to create more compelling experiences as consumers and as people who are just playing with the medium over the next 5 years, because it's not just going to be text or images, but there's so many things we can do with AI.
Right. Nishat, I want to get in a little bit to what you were talking about, just about allowing anyone to be creative, because I know there is a lot of fear, and I don't like to focus on the fear because I think that the fear is sort of like what comes with new technology always. We've seen that from the very beginning with painters and creating their own pigments, and it comes from the beginning of time. But I really liked what you said about allowing everyone to be creative, and it's more about the idea. And I want to get into that, what is the value of an idea? Like, are we going to start just only selling, like, rather than having sort of like deliverables, is the deliverable going to be an idea? Like,
that's so interesting because we may discuss the same idea, all 4 of us, and then have a different output of it. Right. We may have the same idea and put it through a model that then gives us all the same thing. So actually, like, if we all have the same idea and then we wrote it 4 different ways, we're going to come out with something different. So it's really important that, yes, the idea is unique, differentiated, solves the business problem of a client or a brand or a studio, or tells a story in a unique way. But the idea is also only as good as it's executed. You often see movies where you're like, oh, that was a good idea, but it was poorly done. Or, oh, that was a good idea, but it was done in a formula that I've seen 100 times. So I think that the concept and the execution together are so important. And that's where I do think that if we're humans in the spark, and whether it's, the good old-fashioned folks working on it in a big team or going through a model to create something, the editing at the end is also going to be so important.
Right.
Yeah, and that comes back to the co-pilot thing,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So that comes down to how well are you trained to master this AI? So what you can put in, only what you put in, you can get out, right? So that's why prompt engineers are going to be important, probably.
Yeah. It's a tool. At the end of the day, you're going to need all of the same sort of editing tools that we've been using before, but it just gets us to the drawing board a lot faster. But it doesn't obviate the need for the refinement and really polishing it up and making it your own.
Yeah. Also, just regarding ideas, I mean, I think you can have an idea in the shower, you can have an idea when you're walking down the street, you can have a dream about something. That doesn't mean that it's going to be a great film, a great campaign, a great anything. And so, when I think about people ask, like, how do you come up with an idea? How did you think about that campaign? How did you think about that brand? There's so much more that goes into it than... 100%. There's so much more that goes into it. It's the conversations with your teams. It's the research that you're doing about, the people you're serving. Data can also be skewed, so we have to be so thoughtful about all of these different pieces that are informing the thinking that creates an idea, and you have to be really thoughtful about the creative process too.
Yeah.
If that ever disappears, we can all go to a tropical beach and drink cocktails all day, right?
I'm right behind you.
But let's stay short term.
Yeah, I mean, to that end, like talking about, will this idea that will there be a need for us to go to, designers anymore will be all going to a tropical island. I'm curious, what is going to be the need for, for any students listening, what is going to be the need for any sort of knowledge of craft and composition? I mean, that's one of the big that's one of the big thoughts that I have is you look at a lot of the stuff that many of the AI models spit out, and the composition, quite honestly, is not great. Mm-hmm. Focal points aren't, everything's in focus, or unless you've had this specific prompt, then it's maybe I'm not great at prompting, but then, if I say one thing's in focus, then everything else is ultra blurry. I feel like there's a long ways to go on that. So what happens to craft?
I think it's so important. If you know about different cameras, different camera lenses, different kinds of film, different artists, different moments in art history, you can pull those together to make something unique. And you can, again, and I'm going to keep bringing this up, you can bring your own cultural context to something. If I'm referencing a city where my family lives in India, and then I'm also referencing something in the city that I grew up in America, and I'm able to put that in with another idea, that's going to make something different. You have to know all kinds of different things. It's all of the different tools, whether you're a 3D artist, you're great in Illustrator, you're great in After Effects, or you're really good at analog cameras. I think each piece of knowledge in the craft is valuable because it's going to create a deeper prompt if we're going to talk about generating something, and it's going to allow you to control your output so much more.
Yeah.
So I know we're getting close to time, so I want to ask if you could make some sort of improvement or to any of these workflows. Right now it's a lot of text to image, there's some image to image, ControlNet is doing some pretty amazing things. What would you wish for that's not there? I know this is a surprise question and it's kind of a hard one, but what's missing? What's a big thing that's missing for all of you right now?
To me, it's much bigger than image generation, obviously. So when we talk about the potential for AI, again, it's across multiple different media, but I would also say it's further up the value chain as well. So again, when talking about customer segmentation and being able to automate that CRM, the end consumer relationship, that is really powerful. And I think especially for smaller companies and individuals who are looking to scale either their marketing or their messaging or get their content out there, it's incredibly powerful. That is something that we don't yet see as a package you can buy off the shelf. You'll soon, of course, be able to generate content off the shelf, but not so much with the entire sales process. So I think that pipeline is something that will be very valuable in the future, especially to smaller companies and to individuals.
Yeah. I just have two words, which is representation and regulation. I think those are so critical up from the ethical creative side of things. Artists deserve to be paid, and also people need to be represented in the work.
That goes without saying, yeah.
Yeah, I can join that opinion. I think it was already a little bit the red thread for a while, but I think it gives back what you put into it. So we have to determine what we want it to feed the AI, so it's representation. The representation is fair.
Yeah. Well, thank you. This has been an awesome conversation. I know we're going to maybe leave some time if there's any Q&A. This has been amazing.
Thank you.
And now we wait.
Everyone, and thanks to our panelists. It was a great discussion today, and really just appreciated the perspectives on the impact of the technology, still the importance of craft, and how, if anything, it only deepens the need for our craft as designers and creators, but also pushes us to evolve the craft in new and unique ways. And I also loved and appreciated the healthy conversation around shortcomings in AI right now, particularly as it goes to representation. And the panelists made great points. It's early days for the technology, and a lot of what we're getting out of it is what we feed it. And so as we get smarter and better and more experienced using the technology, we will feed it different things, and we'll get different outcomes from that. Yeah. So I thought it was a great discussion today, and really just appreciated the panelists and their perspectives.
Yeah. Absolutely. Thank you, Tom. Great wrap up. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. We'll be back on April 27th at our usual time, 12 p.m. noon Eastern Time. We hope to see you there. We will have Scott Belsky in discussion. We're switching things up again in April, I should say. So we're going to have Scott Belsky in discussion with a couple of the SoDA member creative leaders. So I hope you can join us there. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.